George Galloway and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
Little Macron says that the contretemps going on board his aircraft in Hanoi was just him and his wife having horseplay. That's not foreplay, that's horseplay. My Little Pony, without his nosebag this time, says it was the Russians what done it. Well, they do everything else, right up to and including Keir Starmer's back door. And Donald Trump says he's warned Netanyahu not to strike Iran. Well, if that's true and it still happens, we can be sure there's a real breach opening up between Washington and Tel Aviv. On the other hand, it all just might be, I don't know, horseplay. There's much more of this coming up in the next 2 hours. It is, after all, the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
That Mrs. Macron's not as nice as she looks, is she? Look at the way she manhandled the president of the French Republic in full view of all the cameras, though they hoped and believed in the beginning that only RT had captured the contretemps, or horseplay as he now describes it, only to discover that Reuters and the Press Association had the pictures too. Nobody's asking about the shoulder blade of the stewardess seen coming out of the plane after them. It looks to me as if there might have been the mother of all contretemps going on inside that plane. It looks to me like her uniform has been torn at the shoulder, and that she may even be bleeding from the shoulder. Do take a closer look at that. Now, if so, that would place grave doubt on Macron's interview in which he gave today, in which he said that he had only been innocently removing a tissue paper from the table of the famous train on the journey back from Kiev to France. It may or may not be true in that case. Equally, this might be the kind of thing that couples do. As a married man myself, I would find it less than horseplay, or more than horseplay, if my wife whacked me in the kisser right before I was to go down the steps to a red carpet waiting for a guard of honor to inspect me. And when you look at the footage in slow-mo, it's hard to square it with the description horseplay. It's a two-hander. Now, I know that Glasgow kissing and French kissing are different things, but it looked much more like Glasgow kissing than French kissing to me. Now, it may have been she was just, I don't know, wiping his nose so that the cameras didn't catch anything unfortunate. It may just have been that she was going to brush the dust off his shoulder and missed, but it looked like a proper whack. Now, these kind of things can happen. They don't happen in my marriage, thank God. And there are men who do get beaten up. In fact, there's a whole new vogue in France where men are being told that if you are the victim of domestic violence, come and do some, I don't know, taekwondo or self-protection classes. It's become the trend in France after the scenes in Hanoi. But the truth is that Macron and his missus cut less than a dash nowadays. The beginning of the Macron era looked like it was going to be Kennedy-esque, if a trifle short, and if the Jackie Kennedy, well, not quite as attractive as Mrs. Onassis. But the end of the Macron era is shaping up like a very tawdry one indeed. So much so that he is taking a back seat on international matters, as indeed is Keir Starmer, who suddenly realizes the very, very grave political danger he and his premiership are now in. Thus, all attention has moved to Berlin, where there were very dramatic developments yesterday and today. Yesterday, Merz, whose father was a Nazi officer, one of Hitler's inner circle, said that he would allow the German missile Taurus, kind of cruise missile with bells and whistles, to be fired as deeply into Russia as the Ukraine wanted to fire it. The problem with that formulation is that the Ukraine are not capable of flying it. Only German armaments engineers can fly and deploy the Taurus missile. In other words, what Merz was saying was that Germany itself was going to attack Russia deep into its interior, not just to Leningrad, St. Petersburg and Moscow, but all parts west of the Urals of the Russian Federation. An attack by Germany on Russia. What could possibly go wrong? Well, we've been getting a hint of it over the last 24 hours. First of all, a member of the Duma from the Defense Committee of the Duma said that if any Taurus missile hits any Russian target inside Russia, then Berlin will immediately be struck in retaliation. Some people saw that as parliamentary hot-headedness. But this afternoon, Margarita Simonyan, the head of RT, the Russian broadcasting foreign arm, international arm, in writing made very plain indeed that if Russia is struck by German missiles, that Germany will be struck in return. Some may say that the Russians are bluffing, but those would be people who knew nothing about Russian history, knew nothing about the Russian character, knew nothing about the state of Russian public opinion, and knew nothing about the character of the Russian state and its leaders. When Margarita Simonyan says something, she is reflecting the views at the very, very top of the Kremlin. And it's hard to argue with them. If the Ukrainians can't fly the Taurus into Moscow, then plainly the Germans must have flown Taurus missiles into Moscow. And the last time German missiles fell on Moscow in the terrible events from Operation Barbarossa in June of 1941, right up until the flag of the Soviet Union was planted above the Reichstag in late April of 1945, the Russians know the Germans very, very well, only too well. Merz has dug in. He insists that that is now the position of Germany, and you may say he's biting off rather more than he may be able to chew, because I remind you that just like Keir Starmer, Merz is the Prime Minister, but only a small percentage of the German people voted for him. And just like Keir Starmer, he has a national populist party breathing down his neck even more hotly than Keir Starmer does, because the AfD in Germany are only a whisker behind Herr Merz in being able to take the chancellorship of the Bundesrepublik. Now, Merz, with 25% of the German people's votes, has therefore taken Germany and by extension Europe and NATO, though I'm going to deep dive a bit into that in just a moment. He's certainly taken Germany to the verge of their third war in just over 100 years with their Russian neighbor. It did not end well the first time. It ended in utter cataclysm and catastrophe the second time. And as Russia has approximately 4,250 nuclear weapons and Germany has none, it wouldn't appear on the face of it that this time will be any better than how it finished last time. Merz is obviously counting on Article 5 of the NATO Treaty, into which I must now dive, for the education of the German public at least, but also a very large number of people who seem to imagine that a Russian retaliation on Germany would automatically trigger an Article 5 resolution of all of the NATO powers to come to Germany's rescue. But neither of those two things is true. There is nothing automatic about Article 5. All of the countries of NATO, all of them, have to agree to trigger Article 5. And I don't believe that Hungary would be the only NATO power to veto any such decision. And secondly, even if triggered, each member of NATO is free to decide how, to what extent, in which way they would respond to Germany's defense. And I have a very strong feeling that not only would Turkey, not only would Hungary, but also Slovakia, and maybe others, maybe even including France. No love lost, of course, historically between France and Germany, would refuse to trigger Article 5. But if it was triggered, then a very significant number of NATO countries, crucially the United States of America, would decline to enter World War III with all of its existential necessity. The end of the world, the end of America, the end of Britain, France, the end of all of the NATO powers, the end of humanity in the world. That's a big price to pay for a little German with a moustache having the nerve to fire cruise missiles by proxy right into the heart of Russia. So my advice to the German people, the German parliament, and to the majority party in the German parliament is to walk this one back just as quickly as possible. My contacts in Moscow, which are not, after all, inconsiderable, are telling me that this is a very strong feeling inside Russia, that they've had enough, that all this messing around is only leading to more war and more blood. That all this, some call it pussyfooting, inching forward a kilometre, a square kilometre at a time, is merely prolonging the inevitable and risking all-out international conflagration. There are many in Moscow, as they now, right now, this hour, face another blizzard of attacks by drones from the Ukrainian armed forces over Moscow right now. There are tens of drones attacking the capital of Russia. If those drones are replaced by Taurus, they may still be shot down, but they are not the only thing that's going to be shot down this evening. What's being shot down is any belief that with the current regime in Kiev, any peace agreement is possible. Virtually nobody in Moscow believes that any peace agreement with little Volodymyr Zelensky is possible or desirable, because it is widely, overwhelmingly felt that any deal with Zelensky will scarcely be worth the paper that it is written on. That Zelensky's only hope of remaining in office, in power, in Kiev, is to keep the atmosphere of war, the fear of war, going forever, for as long as he wants and needs it to. And so the feeling in Moscow now is that Zelensky and his clique must go, that there must be an entirely new government in Kiev, with an entirely new attitude, both towards their east and towards their west. And so the goals of the special military operation, as the Russians call it, war aims, as I call it, are steadily escalating. The buffer zone that Russia has declared it intends to have around the entirety of the east and the north and south of Ukraine can only be more and more ambitious in their scope. Already, Russia is planning to take Kharkov. It's planning to take Odessa. It's planning to blockade the sea from Zelensky, from the regime in Kiev. It's planning to advance all the way to the Dnipro. It's planning effectively to cut Ukraine in half. And then the Hungarians, the Romanians, and the Poles may very well start to claim their land and their people that would thereafter be trapped in a rump, ultra-nationalist regime in Kiev. In other words, Ukraine, as we have known it, historically speaking, briefly, may not soon exist. And if the Germans want to have a go, if they think they're hard enough, I caution them against it. I advise them to watch some of the excellent documentaries on Netflix. Other platforms are available, to see what happened when Germany last invaded Russia, to see what happened the last time panzers were on the Ukrainian steppe, to see what happened at Stalingrad, at Kursk, at the gates of Moscow, at the gates of Leningrad. I advise them to watch these documentaries and to watch them all the way to the end. Now, just before I came on air, Donald Trump said in a press conference that he had warned Netanyahu, he used the word, warned Netanyahu not to strike Iran. Presumably because he's hopeful still that the now fifth round of negotiations on the nuclear question between the United States and Iran are likely to bear fruit, and that the problem can be resolved without war. Now, I said at length on Wednesday, I won't repeat it, but watch it if you haven't seen it, what the consequences would be of a unilateral, independent attack by Netanyahu on the Islamic Republic of Iran. They bear listening to because they are extremely important. If the United States is not going to attack Iran, what chance is there that the United States will intervene to save Israel from an attack on Iran, against which President Trump has warned? He also said that we are getting food to the people of Gaza. Well, up to a point, Lord Copper. The dried food, which is being delivered in tiny quantities compared to the food needs of more than 2.25 million people. Dried food is no use if you don't have water. Dried food is no use if you don't have power to cook. Dried food for 60,000 people, leaving 2.2 million people starving, dying of famine and malnutrition doesn't count as getting food to the people of Gaza. Today, for the umpteenth time, Hamas announced that it had agreed the terms of a permanent ceasefire with Witkoff, Donald Trump's special envoy for the Middle East, and they awaited Israel's response. So the thing is, President Trump, if your envoy has agreed a permanent ceasefire deal with the Palestinian resistance, why are you allowing Netanyahu to thumb his nose at you? Why are you allowing Israel to push America around? Wasn't making America great again your winning slogan? We'll be talking to our guests and to you on the telephone lines about all of these matters over the course of the next 1 hour and 40 minutes. Stay tuned, it's the mother of all talk shows.
A new dawn has broken, has it not?
He had that Clinton thing. His eyes were round and big and smiley, and he was very charming.
He became this incredible pop idol kind of prime minister.
I think most people who have dealt with me think I'm a pretty straight sort of guy, and I am.
New Labour was backed by the most powerful media interests because they realised he was representing them.
He was caught red-handed trading policy in return for hard cash from a businessman.
America has no truer friend than Great Britain.
Both Bush as well as Tony Blair are now wanting to plunge the world into a holocaust.
JP Morgan paid him off for the Iraq war. The man is a war criminal.
Is Tony Blair a war criminal? In my opinion, yes.
Most definitely.
The pursuit of money has become the dominant theme in your life.
All these relationships are, in most people's estimation, corrupt relationships.
No previous Labour Prime Minister has behaved in this shameful, money-grubbing way.
How do you sleep at night? You know, it's that. It's as a person.
So here's the poll. Is Trump going mad? Answers yes, no, or maybe. Well, I would have been in the no column myself, although there are reasons to be concerned. He is, after all, I don't know, he's as old as Jeremy Corbyn. He might even be a little bit older than Jeremy Corbyn, and that is getting to the upper age limit of political office, in my view. I'm going to retire, God willing, at the age of 75. I think all political leaders should retire at the age of 75 and give a younger man or woman a chance. Trump may or may not be going mad, but what do you think about it? You can vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway. You can vote on my X, my Twitter. You can vote on the YouTube community poll, or you can vote on the YouTube stream. You may be amongst the nearly 17,000 people who have already voted. And I'm sorry to say, Donald, a clear majority think you are going mad. And there's a significant number of people who say you've always been mad. It's nothing going mad about it. And if you add the yeses to the maybes, that looks nippy. So if you, like me, do not think that Trump is going mad, you better get voting in this poll as quickly as possible. If you want to call the show, it's toll-free in the United States and Canada, +1 844 944 3344, free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 0808 196 5522, and the worldwide number is 0044 203 966 2625. Just before Niko House, our first guest, comes on. Let's take a call from London, where David wants to talk about Starmer and the EU deal. Go ahead, David.
Thanks, George. Thanks for having me back on just to explain what happened last week. So we had this deal between the EU and UK, between Starmer and Mrs. von der Leyen. And Mr. Starmer was trying to pretend that it was a big, harmless bit of paper that was just all designed to be a load of group hugs and sweetness and light. And then right at the end of the press conference, Mrs. von der Leyen let the cat out of the bag because she was asked a question about the structural, the legal components of it, and she gave it all in complete detail. And Mr. Starmer was stone-faced, in silence, and couldn't wait to get on to the next question or statement, and he didn't say anything about it. And what Mrs. von der Leyen said was the UK was going to be tied up with contributions. The Ministry of Defence was going to be paying money into Brussels, number one, and number two, aligning on defence policy and foreign policy. Well, the way she said it was aligning on rules of security and supply, but you only need to dig a little bit into the EU's rules for third countries participating in EU defence, and you find that that's what it entails. And also opening up UK defence contracts to EU suppliers and contractors, not the other way around, which is the way that Labour ministers sold it. So it was a bit of an embarrassment, more than a big embarrassment for Mr. Starmer.
Well, I agree with every word that you said and couldn't say it more eloquently than you did. This is the first giant step for the Remainers manoeuvring us back into the European Union. Even though the European Union today is even more unattractive than it was in 2016 when we voted to leave it. When we voted to leave it, we didn't have the daughter of another Nazi general, Mrs. von der Leyen, in charge of our policy. We didn't have Maria Callas from a hamlet called Lithuania or Estonia. I never can differentiate between them, running our foreign policy. And we weren't in a state of total war, financial, economic and military, against a nuclear-armed superpower. So actually joining the EU at this time is even more berserk than staying in the EU would have been at the time of the referendum in 2016. And you're right, Starmer tried to paint the deal as one thing, but von der Leyen, who knows how to push the envelope, laid it all bare. I mean, there's the points that you made and one you didn't make. We are now going to open our labour force again to free movement of European Union labour. That's the best part of 500 million workers who will have the opportunity to move here without our say and take up jobs as long as they are only 19 to 32 years old. But they can also bring their families. So if you're 19 to 32, you can move here and you can compete for work here against the unemployed and underemployed British labour force, and you can bring your wife, and you can bring your old mother, your old father, and they can compete with your old mother and father for an appointment at the doctor's. And if you've got kids, they can compete with your kids for a school place. Now, for London, of course, they'll be thrilled to have Czech baristas back again. Those with property to renovate will be delighted that Bulgarian builders will be back in town. But the British builders and the British baristas will be less thrilled. And the further north in the country you go, where there are fewer macchiatos on sale, whether by a British or a Bulgarian barista, and where there's less house renovation going on, the competition for labour will be that much more intense, because the pattern that's developing in Britain now with immigration, I'm not talking about asylum seekers, not talking about refugees, it's a separate question, but we have very substantial immigration into Britain still, and much of it is from the EU still, even before this deal that Starmer and von der Leyen have just done. A very substantial part of immigration into Britain is EU immigration. And that EU immigration is mainly in London. The Africans, the Asians, and so on, well, they're normally the Midlands and points north, which is one of the main reasons why Keir Starmer, politically speaking, is now right behind the 8 ball. Thanks, David, for that opportunity to make these points. Comments on the Macron slap. Uzi 1mm says Macron's wife groomed him and is old enough to be his dad. Well, Candice Owens has done some sterling journalistic work which seems to establish, at least to her satisfaction, that Mrs. Macron is in fact a man. I have no knowledge about that, nor any real interest in it. She's entitled to be what she wants to be. He's entitled to marry whomsoever he wants, and the law allows. But she does appear not to be as nice as she looks. And when My Little Pony was giving his horseplay alibi today to camera, I was looking very, very closely at his hooter, and it kind of looked like it had been slapped rather than French kissed to me. Crowhawk says, she wasn't a stewardess, she's ramp ground crew. The thing on her shoulder was her scarf trapped by her high-vis vest. Well, you all obviously know her better than I do, Crowhawk. Thanks for setting me straight. Logger says, it was pow! Right in the kisser. Indeed it was. Here's Lance in Canada on Russia, Palestine. Go ahead, Lance.
Hey, how are you, George?
Nice to hear from you again. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's always good to hear from you, and it's good to see you still standing for what's right. It's probably going to get harder and harder.
For sure.
I guess my take on all of this is that, the Russian people want to do what's right. And I believe that if Putin wanted to take care of things and stop things, he could go to them and tell them what it would cost, and they could decide. But I actually am starting to think, when I see some of the things going on in Ukraine and that Putin is actually working for the Zionists. But anyway, that's my thought, and you won't agree with it, but
for the Zionists,
that's what I'm starting to think.
Why do you say that, Lance?
Well, because there's things going on in Ukraine. We're clearing out the Banderites. We're going to declare that the next Holy Land. All kinds of things that I hear going on there. The chief Zionist of the Ukraine is selling off Ukraine assets. So I just feel that's what's happening. Or because I believe that the Russian people would want to step in, and I believe that a leader like Prigozhin would have stepped in. I think that Russia's working for them, or at least Putin is, and he's fooling the Russian people. But I could be wrong.
Well, that's a novel take on things, Lance, and we like to encourage people to make novel takes. It won't surprise you if I tell you that I think I've never heard such nonsense in my life, and for the following reasons. The intention of Russia from the beginning has been to cause as few civilian casualties and as little destruction of civilian property as possible, for lots of reasons, but one which Westerners usually find difficult to grasp. For the Russians, The Ukrainians are them. They believe that Ukraine is theirs. It's Russia. And that the people who live there are Russians. Whether they're ethnically Russian or whether they're amongst the nearly 40% who speak Russian, or even if they pretend not to be able to understand Russian. They believe that this is a fellow Slavic people that was for the greatest period of the 20th century a part of the same country as them. And that when they gave Crimea, one drunken night, I think it was a Tuesday, when Khrushchev handed over Crimea from the Russian Soviet Socialist Republic to the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, it was merely transferring sixpence from one pocket into the other. It made no difference, as both were, and they believed would forever be, a part of the same country. But the wish of the Russian people to cause as little destruction in Ukraine is progressively being worn away. And the attacks going on in Moscow right now, and they're still continuing, I've just checked, going on in Moscow right now, are such that the patience of everybody is wearing thin. Otherwise, Simonian would not have made the statement she made today. She does not shoot from the hip or shoot from the lip. She is undoubtedly reflecting her master's voice. Thanks, Lance. Yasser in Quebec, staying in Canada. Yasser, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Galloway. Thanks for taking my call. I wanted to talk about the point you made in regards to Donald Trump warning Netanyahu to not proceed with any attack on Iran. I think it's a classic textbook case of the tail wags the dog or the dog wags the tail. Because I think if history is any guide, and Donald Trump is certainly the paramount manifestation of that, the U.S. presidents ever since JFK have been effectively held hostage by the Israeli government and the Israeli lobby. I'm sure you're following the declassification and release of documents related to JFK assassination, and there are some channels that have done great work, including one entitled Patriotism Unhinged. And some people have devoted like decades of their life to this endeavor to unearth what really transpired with JFK. And I'm sure you're well aware of the fact that both JFK and his brother were trying to force the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC, erstwhile name was American Zionist Committee for Public Affairs, AZCPA, to register as a foreign agent and a foreign lobbying organization. And they were resisting, and then JFK ends up dead. And same thing for Bill Clinton, a relatively recent example. Anyone who's read the Starr report, the Ken Starr, who was the prosecutor, it's quite clearly, lucidly mentioned in there that he used to talk in his pillow talk with Monica Lewinsky that he's afraid that our certain foreign government is eavesdropping on him. And for like everybody who was privy to what he meant was quite sure that he was referring to the government of Israel. So I think as your friend and frequent guest, Professor Gerald Horne states, it's the government of Elon and Phelon, and Donald Trump is under no illusion that the minute he turns on the Israeli government of Netanyahu, his days will be numbered in the presidency and even on this planet, because I think that lobby is quite ruthless, and they don't quite joke around. And there are many examples in the recent past, whether it's Bill Clinton and then certainly Monica Lewinsky and him getting impeached, barely, I guess, skirting the idea of being thrown out of the office, and George Bush Sr. when he was trying to force, in 91, the Madrid talks, and before that, the JFK saga. So I'm not quite sure if he is quite independent in exercising his authority or his power, because it seems like the tail wags the dog when it comes to U.S.-Israel relationship. What do you think about that?
Well, certainly hitherto, for the most part, though there have been exceptions. Truman didn't fancy Zionism all that much, and he made that plain in a now famous video when he tried to explain the dilemma that the United States was now in, where terrorists were demanding everything, and where the Arabs who had been given promises in the Balfour Declaration were increasingly being left without the promises being kept. And he reputedly didn't like the Israelis very much. Eisenhower didn't like them very much either. And that was shown in the Suez War, when Britain, France, and Israel conspired to create a war in the Middle East so they could invade Egypt and seize the Suez Canal, and Eisenhower ordered them to halt and desist. We know from the White House tapes just exactly what Richard Nixon thought, not just of Israelis, but of Jews. And it remains to be seen what attitude he would have taken if he had not fallen from power over the Watergate. And then there was George Bush Sr., to whom you referred. George Bush Sr. did insist that Israel go to the Madrid talks. And he did instruct James Baker, the then Secretary of State, to begin preparing sanctions against Israel if they refused to attend. And so it's true that most US presidents have been willing hostages of the Israel lobby, but I keep quoting Che Bose's great Irish saying, "Eaten bread is soon forgotten." It's true that the Adelsons gave Donald Trump a lot of bread, but he ate it long ago, and he no longer needs it. As a matter of fact, what he needs more is the diamonds and pearls that were showered on him by the Arab chiefs on his recent visit in the Persian Gulf. He needs them far more than he needs the Adelsons. He's just said that he raised $5.1 trillion on that trip. Now, allowing for Trump's traditional hyperbole, let's cut that in half. That's still $2 trillion for the American economy that he came back with, given on a plate by these Arab chieftains. He needs them more than he needs the Miriam Adelsons. The Israel lobby is wealthy, but it's not as wealthy as the Gulf Arabs are. But you may turn out to be right, and I may turn out to have egg on my face. But if I was Netanyahu, I would take the warning that Trump gave this evening seriously. Because if there's one guy who's been in the Oval Office in recent memory who is less likely to take kindly to being slapped in the face, kicked in the teeth, spat upon, and treated with derision and contempt, it's got to be Donald Trump, surely. How's Donald Trump going to look tomorrow if Netanyahu ignores him and launches an attack on Iran? How's Donald Trump going to explain that? How's he going to explain it to the kings and the sheikhs and the emirs that gave him all that gold just a week or two ago? Let me read some comments. June Robertson says, even Mr. Putin speaks German. Well, indeed, he was the KGB resident in East Berlin. Christopher St. John says, American and European fools playing with nuclear fire and with the lives not only Ukrainians, but their own. And Ilya Kuryakin, great name for those done certain age, says the pathetic West has been trying to take Russia for 1,200 years. How's that working out for you? Crowhawk comes back and says, I wonder to what extent these drone attacks on Moscow are orchestrated by the West to precipitate Russian escalation. And Nathan Dunning says, if Storm Shadow hit Moscow or any other Western missile, expect serious retaliation. Tom's on the line in Ireland with a message for Donald Trump. We better hear it. What would you like to say, Tom?
Good evening. Thank you for having me on your show. I'm the man who hears God's voice. I'm known all over the world as the man who hears God's voice. I'm not a crank. I'm not a nutcase. I'm actually known that in all of Ireland and the world. And I sent out a message to Donald Trump today on all the formats, Facebook, everywhere. I sent it to the White House. I sent it to everywhere, all the newspapers everywhere. And I asked Donald Trump a few questions. And I asked him, has being a president gone to your head? Has being a president gone to your head? Are you feeling your age? Or are you having bad advice? Because all you hear Donald Trump saying is, all those poor soldiers getting massacred. And who's supplying the arms to massacre them? America, Donald Trump. So none of what he's saying makes any sense. It's nonsensical. It doesn't make any sense. So I sent that message to Donald Trump and all the newspapers, etc. Because it doesn't make any sense.
Let's hope he gets the. Let's hope he gets the message, Tom. I think the point about Trump is he says too much. He talks too much. And he contradicts himself, sometimes even in the same statement, but oftentimes in the same day, and most of the time in the same week. He is, it would appear, as Oscar Wilde described, like a sofa, bearing the impression of the last man to sit upon him. And I don't mean that in a Macron kind of way. He does have bad advisors. That much, I think, is clearly established. But the old good czar bad advisors alibi doesn't really wash when you're his age and when you're in your second term as President of the United States. It's your fault if you've got bad advisors. It's your fault if you act on bad advice. Tom, hope you got a reply. Come back and tell us if Trump gets back to you. Have you... Yeah, go on, Tom. Last word.
I also told him that he was just as guilty as Putin. Because if he stops fueling a war that he's doing, this war will be finished within weeks. If America stops fueling the war. But that's all they're doing. They're fueling the war. And war, as we know... Yes, for sure. And
not just America. Not just America. Ireland's fueling the war. Britain, France, Germany, we're all fueling the war. And if we get a real war, well, we might have a few seconds, maybe minutes, to reflect on how foolish all that was. Thanks, Tom. Now, you can go to the MOATS.tv website and leave a donation to pay for the midweek show. These incredibly generous MOATS viewers just have Fiorentino Montalvo, Ben Stradling, Salama Celentano, Elaine Gonaim, and this week a huge thank you to Seamus Kelly, who made a very significant donation. Thank you to each and every one of you. It's much appreciated. Please, before the end of this evening, please do become a MOATS donor tonight. Go to moats.tv. It's very simple. Let me take a quick break. Coming up after the break, Nima Tavallaey-Roodsari, football journalist and pundit and co-host of the Italian Football Podcast. And then later, Niko House. Stay tuned.
You know, and it's a very, thank you for, you know, I'm a big fan of your show, Gigi. Great debate, great. And I'm Scottish. I'm very passionate about what's happening there, you know. I had a great mom. She was Scottish, Mary MacLeod. She taught me well. She taught me well at everything, including golf. I love Scotland, and I love the Scottish food. It's great food. I said to Melania, haggis. Look at that. What's more Scottish than that? Me. I am that haggis. She said, what, thin-skinned and full of crap?
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well, 5 million people have watched the mother of all talk shows over the course of the last week, and not the least contribution to that was a spectacular hit on Instagram of hundreds of thousands of views, and it might have had something to do with the title that our editor, who's a very good man with words, put on it. It said, "Get your kit off." So it may have been mistaken for something else, but in fact, it was a clip about the Arsenal Football Club sacking their kitman after 20 years because he made a Facebook post sympathetic to the Palestinian people in Gaza. Nima Tavallaey-Roodsari knows more about football than almost anyone in the world. And I wanted to ask him, how widespread are these crackdowns against footballers and other staff in football clubs? And why? Why, Nima, did football go mad for the Ukraine? Even corner flags were turned into blue and yellow. But the Arsenal kitman can't put a sympathetic post on his own personal Facebook in support of the Palestinians. How widespread is all this?
Good evening, George. It's good to be with you again, even though it's again under rather difficult and sad circumstances. This has been widespread for quite some time. We've seen people be cancelled and sacked, with Markbonnick, the Arsenal kitman, who's now filing who's filed, I should say rather, a legal complaint against Arsenal. And I urge everyone to go on social media and try to donate to his campaign, to his legal fund, and to show support to him, because he has done absolutely nothing wrong. But this was very widespread. I mean, if we go back to the weeks after October 7th, what we do remember is, of course, several journalists with the British mainstream media in particular, The Guardian and so on, many of whom have actually active family members who are actively serving in the IDF, something they fail to disclose to their readers. But regardless, if we go back to then, they were talking about how Jews don't matter, and that the football needs to, equating once more Israel and Zionism with Judaism. But a lot has happened since then, because nobody bought it, and the overwhelming majority of people didn't buy it. Now we're in a situation where, after almost 2 years of trying to get the International Olympic Committee, FIFA, to ban Israel and suspend them, we're now in a position, due to the ramped up genocide, or as Professor Norman Finkelstein called it, the final solution to the Gaza question that Israel is pushing. Now it's gotten so bad that we have the EU Sports Commissioner, Glenn Mikalev, saying things like there should be no space in sporting events to those who do not share our values, adding that I no longer understand, adding that he thinks that maybe Israel should be banned from sports, obviously just floating the idea, not doing anything about it. And this kind of echoes what we've seen from Friedrich Merz, the German chancellor, who's saying things like, I no longer understand what the Israeli army is doing in the Gaza Strip. With the goal that the civilian population is being impacted to such an extent, which again echoes what liberal Zionists have been doing and saying in the liberal Western democracies for quite some time now. And that is that it's, they're trying to rehabilitate, they're changing their tune slightly for two reasons. One is they want to save their own skin. The entire world has seen a live-streamed Holocaust and genocide, and now that's being ramped up. We've all seen the horrific images of the last 24, 48 hours of pretty much the entire population of Gaza, all 2 million, or whatever's left of them after Israel has been murdering them indiscriminately for 2 years, almost 2 years, have been being pushed to the south, banging for food, and then, as Professor Norman Finkelstein said, we know what they're going to do. They're going to do what they've always done when they mow the lawn. And these Western leaders and these Western journalists have seen that, and they no longer can pretend. I mean, the perfect example of that is Piers Morgan, who is the greatest example, I'd say, of the rat abandoning the ship. And as I said, they're doing this for two reasons. They want to save their own skin, but also because they know what's coming next. And that is the legal ramifications of this. And that is all of them, politicians to these so-called journalists, like the gentleman whose name I alluded to earlier, and which you brilliantly have repeatedly destroyed so many times on his own show. I actually am starting to think that he's some sort of a masochist, and that's why he keeps bringing you on. He gets off on you humiliating him publicly. But that aside, if we talk about the reason why they're doing this is because they know that these indictments are coming. And let's remember, Julius Streicher was not even a member of the Nazi party, and he was convicted of crimes against humanity. And they know that this is coming, so they're trying to save their skin. But more importantly, what they're trying to do is they're trying to rehabilitate Zionism, liberal Zionism. They're trying to say that, no, Zionism isn't the problem. Netanyahu's the problem. The individual, it's one bad apple, not the whole bunch. But, we are talking about, if we just talk from the sporting perspective, in January 2025, the Palestinian Sports Media Association said over 708 Palestinian athletes have been murdered. Today, Abu Bakr Abed, football journalist turned war correspondent, who thankfully now is safely in Ireland, he said, he tweeted out that now over 270 footballers have been murdered, with Mohammed Abu Lebdah, the goalkeeper from Deir el-Balah, being the latest one to have been murdered. So, there's no way they can get the proverbial crap back into the horse, and that's why they are trying to save their skin. So we've actually seen a shift from this, because they whilst they're doing all of this, they're still banging on the anti-Semitism drum and all the nonsense that we've seen for, well, frankly, since 1948. But the problem is that nobody buys that stuff anymore.
Well, I mean, I of course accept and agree with all of that, admirably, very succinctly put. But it begs the question, why did Arsenal choose this moment in time to sack their kitman over a Facebook post? Why did Gary Lineker get sacked from the BBC for the most mild reproach to the Israeli state? Why did the ownership or leadership of Barcelona FC, in protest at the Barcelona City Council breaking its relationship with Tel Aviv, bring the Zionist leaders to the new camp to pose at the stadium in solidarity with Israel? Do these people just not see the writing on the wall?
No, I think it's, the way I see it is again, they're trying to save and rehabilitate Israel. They are trying to save what can be salvaged, because they thought that they see the writing on the wall, but they're in damage control, essentially. That's from where I'm standing. That's how I see it. They know that after everything that's happened, these almost in October it's 2 years, the world has woken up. Their brand is toxic. The youth despise them, even in countries like America, which the great Jimmy Dore says is the most propagandized group of humans on earth. They're not even buying it anymore. You have even Trump's base saying that they're tired of Israel. Why is America fighting Israel's wars, and so on and so forth? It has reached the point now where they're in just complete panic mode, and they're doing everything and anything to damage control to save Israel and Zionism, because it's lost its legitimacy. And that's why it's really important to keep doing what everyone has been doing, all the activists, every demonstration, every petition, continue to not, to demonstrate, to petition and cancel all deals and financial deals, university deals, sports deals with Israel. Don't let them blame the genocide and Holocaust of the past since October 7th, 2023. Don't let them pin that on Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu is the perfect Israeli. He is the perfect embodiment of a sick, twisted ideology that permeates all of Israeli society, and which is the reason why Israel even exists. It's not one bad apple. It's a rotten rotten political ideology that is built upon the supremacy of one group over another. That's the issue, and that's what we have to remember. All of this comes down to that. They are trying to save Zionism. They're in damage control mode.
Now, I know you're a great authority on football throughout the world, but I wonder if what happened to Clapton at the weekend has reached you yet. The game was abandoned, a cup final in which an East End team, Clapton, was winning 2-0. And the game was abandoned because there were Palestinian flags in the crowd. And the supporters refused to remove them. And the Clapton lads stood by their supporters, so the referee abandoned the game. I don't know if you're across that story, but if you are, say a word on it.
Well, I mean, I assume Clapton is in the UK. I haven't heard entirely where that story is, but I assume it's in the UK, yes?
Yeah, East End of London.
Well, let's remember that Kneecap, the Irish trio, Mohara, is being, as you so brilliantly adumbrated on, what they are turning the law into an ass, to use your words. They're using anti-terrorism legislation to prosecute a rapper from Ireland for picking up in a concert, picking up a flag thrown onto the stage and waving it under terrorism legislation. I mean, what that has happened is that it's made Kneecap even more popular and much more relevant. And because people aren't buying this nonsense anymore. And more people are demonstrating. And the more the state, whether it's the British state or the German state, who's particularly absurd and has overreacted in this regard, the more they use repressive means to suffocate this protest, the bigger the backlash is going to be. And that's why they're almost dumbfounded. They don't know what to do anymore. And so they're overreacting and turning, the Streisand effect, as you said, as you brilliantly alluded to the other day. That's what this is. And, because we've reached the point where we're circling the drain. Zionism, the narrative on Israel, the narrative on Ukraine, the narrative on all of these things is circling the drain. They've lost control. Their propaganda doesn't bite anymore. Whether you're a right-winger, you're a left-winger, none of these things bite anymore. None of the mainstream narratives bite anymore. They're losing and hemorrhaging support, and the only way they can muster any counter-argument to that is by repressive regimes and hollowing out whatever was left of these so-called Western liberal democracies. I mean, let's remember what they did to Julian Assange, for crying out loud.
Indeed. Now, Nima, I don't want to intrude on private grief, and I know you would have wished it otherwise, but as a Scotsman, you can imagine my joy as scottmctominay, the Scotland star and former Manchester United star. Why we ever let him go, I have no idea. Not only lifted the league title in Serie A, but became Italy's Player of the Year of the entire league. What a phenomenon scottmctominay in Napoli has turned out to be. You couldn't have written this.
No, it's rather remarkable the season he has had. And if we remember, when he arrived, I mean, the way that Manchester United chased him essentially out of town, and you had United fans celebrating. But of course, waiting there in Naples was a certain Antonio Conte, who was waiting with open arms to welcome Scott McTominay, because, if there's anything we've seen throughout Antonio Conte's brilliant career as a coach, it's that he's a systems coach, but he knows how to get to formate players in that system with specific tasks and skill sets to get the most out of them. And Scott McTominay has been utilized perfectly in that midfield trio together with Stanislav Lobotka and Andre Frank Zombo-Anguissa. And that's why he scored that many goals, and they've been important goals too, because this is a Napoli side that have struggled to create chances, that have struggled to score. And McTominay was as Conte himself put it, he was born to score goals. And he scored his most beautiful one yet with that scissor kick against Cagliari to help win Napoli's second Serie A title in 3 years.
It must have been very painful for you to say that, Nima, as a supporter of the team that came second, and I'm very grateful for your dignity in doing so. Nima Tavallaey-Roodsari, the football journalist and pundit extraordinaire. Thanks for joining us, co-host of the Italian Football Podcast. I never miss it. Let me take a quick break, then it's Niko House right after this break. Stay tuned. President Putin definitely isn't Nikita Khrushchev, who was a clown, in my opinion. Neither is he Stalin, but he's much closer to Stalin than any other Russian leader has ever been. He has a mind that calamity has hardened and turned to steel. He is extremely cautious, but cautious only for a purpose. He is cautious in the hope that the goals of the operation that he's involved the country in can be achieved. But no one should mistake that caution for weakness. I've met the man. 3 times I've met him. I've met lots of leaders. I've met leaders from all over the world, including all of the British leaders that I sat in Parliament under. Vladimir Putin is a very determined guy. He has a clear set of goals. He told you about them in 2007 in Munich. He warned you in 2007 that Russia regarded NATO encroachment in Ukraine as a red line matter for the existential survival of the Russian Federation, which it is his job to defend, and nobody should make the mistake of thinking that he will not do that job. People misunderestimated Stalin, but Stalin wasn't Stalin when he told the beast of Berlin that we will crush you in your lair. Stalin wasn't Stalin. Putin isn't Stalin. Trust me on that.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Is Trump going mad? Yes, no, or maybe? Vote now on my Telegram, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. Nearly 20,000 have voted, and it's not looking great for Donald. Federico in Canada on NATO and the EU. He's up next. Go ahead, Federico.
Hello, George. It's been a while. Yes, I wanted to say, George, okay, if Europe wants to go and jump against Russia, well, go ahead. The willing countries, like you were mentioning before, Article 5 is not going to be mentioned. That's not going to happen. They're going to ask for Article 5, and they're going to get involved against Russia. Apparently, they haven't learned anything since the First World War, when they say the world to end all wars. And then we end up in the Second World War. So, yes, like you mentioned before, I agree totally with you, George, when you said the Balfour Declaration, given the state of Israel instead of Argentina, Palestine. We can talk hundreds of hours about it. But yes, George, if they want to go to war against Russia, let them do it and repeat the disaster that the lost generation happened in the First World War and the other in the Second, but there was not even meant to reproduce in Europe. But not only that, they want to take it down to South America, where there's only one president, in the case of Colombia, which have said we break relations with Israel because of the genocide. Now, that president has the CIA and has all the apparatus from Israel, the Mossad, etc., Pegasus, you can imagine it, against him. And not only that, the elites of that country who doesn't want him to win, or his party, he's not going to be reelected, he's not running for a second term. But what United States and Israel is going to do in Central and South America is going to be, okay, get back to business. So what I'm trying to say, George, after 37 states in the United States cannot work or initiate an entrepreneurship or a company unless they sign the little letter that says you will not boycott Israel, 37 out of 50. Isn't this what happened in England with Jeremy Corbyn when he was accused of anti-Semitism? But let's take the revolutions in the universities where the only people that can study apparently in the United States Harvard elite universities are only Zionists, and they're going to take over political decisions in the next 10 years, excluding Palestinians, Colombians, Latin Americans, etc., bright brains that can, of course, have always support for the European and especially the American development. My point is, are not we under a colonization plan, George, after 37 states in the United States, after Jeremy Corbyn defeated, after the fake and attitude of NATO when it comes to go to war against Russia? Isn't this a kind of a virus, an invasive species that is taking over the politicians, corrupting them, and excluding, like we have seen in the last 2 weeks in France, in Germany, in Holland, in Amsterdam, the people saying, hey, stop the war, NATO? That's my question. Are we under a colonization plan, George?
Well, look, I mean, we're in a struggle. We're in a mighty struggle. And there are no final victories and there are no final defeats. You're only defeated if you surrender and give up. And neither you nor I are going to surrender or give up. We may win. Maybe it will be the job of our children to win. But we shouldn't ever allow ourselves, I'm not saying you did, to consider things ineluctable, that there's nothing we can do, that we're beat before we start, that they are James Bonds and intrinsically, inherently unbeatable. They're not. If Jeremy had got 2,745 more votes in 2017, that's an almost unimaginably tiny sliver. If he'd got those votes in key seats, that's all. Not even 3,000 votes would have made the difference between Jeremy Corbyn becoming Prime Minister and Theresa May continuing as Prime Minister. So we came very close there. And Corbyn deserves a great deal of credit for that, and those who campaigned for him, fought for him in that. Now, of course, if he had won, if he had gone to the palace, if he had been allowed to go to the palace, if the tires on his bicycle hadn't been slashed to stop him getting to the palace, as soon as he was in number 10 Downing Street, he would have been under remorseless, unremitting attack, just like the president of Colombia is now. And who knows how long he would have lasted? Who knows what would even have happened to him? But we would have been in a hell of a much stronger position if Corbyn had got those votes. And if he had left the Labour Party, on the day that he was forced out as leader, he would have left with hundreds of thousands of people behind him, and with a clear political program, a very clear and one that had achieved the highest number of Labour votes of any Labour leader since 1945, the biggest improvement in the Labour vote since 1945. So that would have been the time to leave. 5-6 years later, probably the too late party. Thanks, Federico. Let me finally be able to go to Niko House, political commentator, founder of MCSC Network, who's been so busy tonight. I think we're his third show of the evening. Niko, thanks for fitting us in. I'm glad you're in such demand. We're talking about your president. Has he gone mad? Yes, no, or maybe? What do you say?
You know, it's funny that this is a question that I was wrestling with my friend earlier this morning. Some people believe that he's gone crazy, but that would insinuate that he's capable of making his own decisions politically. And I'm not exactly sure he is. There's this Alex Jones wing of his base that's now saying that it's everybody making the decisions for him that's the problem. But then you have to consider the fact that he's the one who chose them. That was the excuse they gave us the first time around. They told us that things would be different, whether it came to the intelligence community and how he handled them, when it came to the Epstein situation and the Epstein files and the JFK files and how he handled that situation, or how he handled international foreign policy. They told us that things would be different because he's not, because he learned from his mistakes in the last election, in the last administration. I don't know if you can call him crazy, but I can say, kind of similar to what Russia said, that he seems like he's under some emotional distress and he is not making wise decisions. And I do lean towards the belief that he is not making wise decisions because the assessments that he is receiving are from people who are ill-intentioned and are working for the military-industrial complex and Western imperialists. However, that does not take away from the fact that he is the president. He is the one that ran for office. He's the one that said he was going to make America great again. And therefore, the onus falls on him. So when he makes insane, asinine statements like you're thinking about sanctioning Russia, or he allows things to happen like what we just recently heard, if what Merz from Germany said is true, if you allow Ukraine to use long-range weapons to directly attack Russian military facilities, well, at that point, the only thing we can call you is crazy, because I'm not sure what result you think you're going to get other than total and absolute war. And I would not be the person dumb enough or crazy enough to challenge Putin, because like you said, he is a lot of things, but an idiot who is not always planning ahead is not one of them. He is a strategic military genius, and he accounts for everything. So the statements that Trump is making and the decisions that he's being allowed, that are being allowed to make, the decisions that are allowed to be made on his behalf does tend to make one lean towards he's either crazy or stupid.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the best vote on this poll would have been maybe. In other words, the jury is still out as to why crazy things are happening. Crazy things are being threatened to happen. And you said, much as I said actually at the beginning of the show, that one of the key problems is that there's no consistency at all on anything, not on the files. I mean, I'm so old, I remember when Trump said that the Epstein files were on the desk of the appropriate official, Pam Bond, and she was about to release them. And they're still not released. Why?
Yep. I'm old enough to remember even
the
whenever...
JFK files, all these, if you like, process issues that don't depend on anybody else. Nobody else is required in your AG releasing the Epstein file. The Americans alone can do that. Don't have to persuade anybody else. So why has it not been done?
You know, that's a fantastic question. I remember when Pam Bondi was trying to actually blame the New York Justice Department, and then they were trying to blame some FBI officials. Then she said as soon as it gets to her desk, she's going to get this cleared right up, and then those files will be released. Then the several months pass by, the files aren't released, and then she says, well, we're facing some other difficulties. And really, it seems like they're just running out of excuses. Because, I mean, in my opinion, and I'm sure it's probably the same as yours and much of your audience, it's because there are too many people, probably some of his administration, people that the United States are allied with, people that are still alive, celebrities that are still on the payroll. There are too many names that appear on the Epstein files, and you just can't. I mean, not just Epstein files, but even the JFK files. It would be a firestorm unlike we have ever seen. Not necessarily because of the names, but because of the demand for accountability that would follow. And that demand for accountability, I don't know if they have if they're brave enough to pursue it.
Let's take the Iran track for a moment. He said tonight that he's warned Netanyahu. He used the word warned, not advised or counseled, but warned. I mean, I don't know about you. Your kids are still too young, maybe. When I warn my children, they know I'm serious. I'm not advising them, I'm warning them not to do this or to do this. If you warn a country like Israel that is entirely beholden to you, that exists only on your dollars, your money, your weapons, your diplomatic support, that ought to be enough to stop it, right? So, do you think it'll work? And do you think he'll still say tomorrow that Israel shouldn't do it?
So, if we're basing this off of experience with my kids, unfortunately, when I warn my kids, sometimes they heed the warning, and sometimes they test fate. So I don't know if I want to base it off my children, but Trump has warned Netanyahu in the past. Didn't he warn Netanyahu not to engage Iran recently, and Netanyahu still chose to engage Iran? The truth of the matter is, whatever Trump says in regards to Israel, as far as telling them to not do something, I don't believe him. This false bravado that he likes to project in regards to his relationship with Netanyahu as if he is the one in control of it, relies on the belief that it is Netanyahu that is truly running Israel. Bibi is a problem. Bibi might be the face of Israel, but the reality of the situation is we know that Israel's goals and the powers behind Israel are greater than any one prime minister. So he can threaten Bibi Netanyahu all he wants to. I can believe that, I guess. Like, yeah, you threaten Bibi Netanyahu. However, the powers that run both of y'all, if they tell Bibi to do it, Bibi will do it. If they greenlight him to do it, he will attack Iran. And if they tell you not to do anything about it, you will let him do it, because that's who you guys answer to. And I'm just not one of those people that believe that Bibi Netanyahu is the sole proprietor of Israel's Genocide Incorporated.
Powerful point. Let's switch track. He always told us he had a great relationship with Putin, that he could solve the Ukraine war. Sometimes he said in an afternoon, sometimes he said in an hour, sometimes he said in a day, but it was always days, not weeks, not months. But now, after a 2-hour, highly successful phone call, he said last Monday, now, by the end of the week, he's denouncing Putin, saying that he's playing with fire and that some really, really bad things, he talks like a child, Niko, some really, really bad things are going to happen to Putin if he doesn't roll over for the American administration. What's that all about? Will the real Donald Trump stand up?
Yeah, I know. It's funny how literally from week to week, Trump changes his stance and his rhetoric on what's happening in that war and how he feels about Putin and how he's conducting himself, to the point where even Russian officials are saying they don't even take him seriously anymore. They're like, yeah, we don't really trust him. He's emotionally immature. He's emotionally drained, and you know, he's getting bad information. Therefore, we just don't even take him seriously. That in and of itself, I would be insulted if I was Trump, when people literally are coming out and saying they don't take you seriously as one of the leaders of the most powerful countries in the world. But it also, in my opinion, speaks to the fact that Trump doesn't actually understand the dynamics of the situation, because he's saying, okay, there are going to be some really bad things that happen. Like, what are you going to do? Arm their worst enemy and give them weapons? Take long-range restrictions off the weapons you've already given them? You're saying, people keep forgetting, right? Yes, Russia attacked Ukraine with the largest drone strike attack that they've conducted since this war started. That was right after they said that these regions that voted, like the Donetsk region, Donbass, all the regions that voted to join Russia, that's off the table. You can't have them. Well, they voted to join us and y'all are attacking, and that's kind of the point of this war. Well, that's off the table. Okay, so you won't give us that. We want a permanent end to the war, Russia says. Well, no, we want a 30-day ceasefire so that we can rack up on our armory and re-up on all the weapons that we've been using to attack you that we got from NATO. So that after the 30-day ceasefire, if you don't give us what we want, we're just going to continue to fight you the way that we've been fighting you. Okay, so you're not going to have help us achieve a permanent end to the war, just a temporary one so that you can rearm. Okay, so you guys think that I'm playing. Okay, cool. I'm going to light y'all asses up then. That's what I saw this weekend. Trump failed to mention that while he was condemning that attack. Every time Russia engages in good faith to try and achieve an end to the war, not a ceasefire, an end to the war, peace in the region, the EU, NATO, and Ukraine itself don't take those talks seriously, and then Putin has to show that this has been 10 to 15 years coming, and therefore I have to ensure that this is not going to be the next 10 to 15 years. And I will do so however I see fit, because I'm winning the war. And so Trump can say, what are we going to do? Threaten to sanction Russia after Russia came out and said, yeah, that's cool. We actually prefer to not be part of your economy. Look at how great our economy has done since we've separated from you guys. It doesn't make any sense for him to keep pissing off Putin, especially considering you've also pissed off the majority of the EU and NATO, because they're not really your allies right now. We don't know where they stand. Yeah, I know he's not going to be president forever, but like in an immediate firefight, as an immediate threat, it's not like y'all coordination will be the tightest at the moment. How about instead of being pissed off at Putin, you talk to Starmer about this quote unquote coalition of the willing. You talk to Germany, and they're basically threatening World War III by greenlighting these weapons, because that coalition of the willing was talked about last month, 2 months ago almost, actually. And the coalition of the willing was literally, let's get a ceasefire so that we can give them more weapons. How about you talk to them if you want Putin to stop reacting to them? Don't talk about the reaction. Talk about the catalyst.
Niko, you're a star. Thanks for fitting us in, and we wish you all the best. We look forward to your continued political commentary on all platforms. Top man, Niko House. Let me take a quick break, and I'll be right back with your calls and Gayatri in the studio. Stay tuned.
The airwaves. This savannah is a rigid dichotomy of fact and fiction. As Fisher says, the Twitter sphere where the slightest misjudgment can spell being cancelled. One species rules over the airwaves through its ability to adapt and survive in even the harshest environments. The George Galloway. The top cat in these parts. It is mostly active on Sunday evenings in Britain and mid-afternoon in the United States. It seldom roars during the day. Most notable for its wide variety of headdress, it protects these parts from the mainstream media. You can catch this fine specimen on the mother of all talk shows. Don't pick a fight with it. They've been known to bite back.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Yeah. Is Trump going mad? Yes, no, or maybe? Well, it looks overwhelmingly that it's yes that has it, but maybe is second place. It's not a good poll for Donald Trump. Let's hear from Davinda in Leicester on Trump. Go ahead, Davinda.
Hi, George. Lovely listening to you, and I still am a student of yours. Go away each week contemplating what I've listened to. I don't think Trump's mad. He's just a rich sport kid who's been put in place by people who, it doesn't matter who goes in his place. He's got nothing to say. There's nothing he can do. The people in power...
You think the lights are on, but there's nothing there?
I don't think any of them really control. I think, if he wanted to let's get rid of him. I think, I'm shocked about, especially with the Americans, they went to war after the towers. So this one, really kind of give up. Because I thought to myself, you went to war, you killed all these people, the Americans were all behind it, USA, USA. And then the following week, you got him dancing with the same bloke, the Al-Qaeda bloke who was chopping people's heads off, who they said was responsible for Twin Towers, part of the Twin Towers. And nobody cares. Actually, no one here, no one at that point. And it was just dismissed, Here's your president. Americans died, 3,000. They went to war, their soldiers died, and they killed millions of others. And I think I've just jumbled up my few points. And so I've got about 4 or 5 now. The Arab nations, I don't think the Arab... I don't really know too much. I know you're more familiar with the Arabs. I was more inclined with the Iranians. I've always liked the culture, and I've known a couple. And we actually know some people who are there. I know they've got loads of different religious groups there. They've actually even, I from a Sikh background, but I'm not the most religious. But they've even got a temple there. And the only thing I know about the Arabs is the Asians who go and work there from all countries, and I know some horror stories who just left in the desert. But the only time I ever see them is horse racing and stuff like that until more recently. And the Arab leaders, they care about the passports, their extended family being able to travel abroad and everything. They won't do nothing, which obviously they haven't, which is, totally obvious to everyone. And I think Russia, China, I think they've eventually just said, do what you're going to do. What they're going to discuss with Trump, they've got Germans, in Germany, orchestrating the war, and then they're going to go and I think Russia, China thinking they've done everything they know. They've been trod on all these years. I think it's come to a point where they're just going to sit back and say, you're going to do it, do it. If you're not, leave us alone.
You know what? I think that's becoming the feeling of many, maybe most of us, and certainly is the feeling in Moscow. The feeling is that there will be no negotiated end to the war, that the war will have to continue until the regime in Kiev collapses, and then from the ashes of that collapse will have to emerge a Ukrainian government that wants to be on friendly terms with Russia, not enemy terms. And that it would know that the price of that was that not only could Western Ukraine never recover the territory it has lost, not only could Western Ukraine never join NATO, but that NATO could never be in Western Ukraine, which, as you'll appreciate, as a man of sophistication, is not the same thing. Because Ukraine wasn't in NATO, but NATO was definitely in Ukraine, every day since the run-up to the coup in 2014 that overthrew the legitimate president of the country and began this war. So Russia, I think, will not settle for a conclusion that does not, A, secure the safety and interests of all the Russian-speaking people in Ukraine, and B, ensures that a regime in Kiev, if there is to be a Western Ukrainian state, which is sympathetic and friendly to them and will have no truck with NATO and probably the EU also, though I'm less sure on that latter point. So I think that kind of fatalism that you express is becoming the zeitgeist. I'll only say this to you. The vast majority of the 400 million Arabs in the world are not horse racing. They're not in Western casinos. They're not at the bordellos. They're not watching the belly dancing. They are struggling, most of them, to stay alive. They are struggling to find some space to breathe, politically, in terms of artistically, in terms of freedom of any kind. The leaders of the Arab world are the people you're really talking about, and it's precisely because that is their character that the West has allowed them, and in some cases arranged for them, to be the leaders in the first place. Devinder in Leicester. Many thanks. Luke Derbyshire says Trump cares about the dead in Ukraine, but not in occupied Palestine or Yemen. The guy's a lunatic. And Bren 10 says asking if Trump is going mad implies that at some point he was sane. Anyone who associates himself with the likes of Epstein is definitely mentally impaired. Problem with that, Bren, is that rules out a very considerable part of the oligarchy on both sides of the Atlantic. Frank O'Mahony says Trump is looking very haggard lately. I wouldn't advise him to try for another term in office. Yeah, me too, Frank. And Robert Livingston says, if you have an IQ higher than a primate and follow US politics, it's simple to see Trump is not playing with a full deck mentally. And Luke says, what would the late, great Robert Fisk write about the current genocide in Gaza, the West Bank, Jerusalem, and Lebanon? What indeed, Luke, what indeed. May, our legend in Oklahoma, she wants to talk about Donald Trump. Go ahead, May.
Hey, my beloved George. How are you? Much love to you,
Great to
Gayatri.
see you again. Thank you, darling.
Love to you, Gayatri, and your team and your worldwide audience. George, I've been really enjoying watching you and your audience grow and your fame, and I just have loved seeing you also visiting other new independent news channels like Jimmy Dore and Judge Napolitano. I love to see you all communicating and supporting each other. But the main thing I want to say about Donald Trump is I tend to agree with what everybody's just been saying about probably not playing with the full deck, but we kind of knew that. It would be so nice, though, if Donald Trump would grow a pair, develop some morals, and pick a stand. He changes. I kind of had some hope when he talked about, having peace and a relationship with Russia, and now he's trying to bully Russia again. Russia won't be bullied. I don't agree with everything with any politician, but there are a lot of things I admire about Putin, and one of them is that he cannot be bullied. And it must be very frustrating for him when Trump reaches out and pulls his hand back and reaches out and pulls his hand back and then throws darts and insults at Putin and Russia. That is what makes me really question Trump's sanity, morality, and everything else about him, really.
Well, I think that is brilliantly I think that's brilliantly summed up, May. The morality I'm leaving aside. I always knew that he had the morals of an alley cat, and that makes him little or no different to any other American president, or for that matter, Western leader. So I'm not concerned about his lack of morality. I'm concerned about his lack of consistency and steadiness. If he had done what he implied he was going to do, of coming into office in January and saying, this is Biden's war, it's not my war, I don't intend to be involved in it. Therefore, now that I'm president, there'll be no more weapons, no more money, no more intelligence sharing with the Ukrainian military, whether the Europeans like it or not. That would have been perfectly consistent. It would have been putting America first, and it would have been a spectacular early win for the United States in the world. But he's done exactly what you said, putting his hand in, taking it out, putting it in, taking it out over and over and over again, and in increasingly lurid and insulting terms. I mean, the things he said about Putin just the other day, I think he was getting on the aircraft. Well, Putin would be entitled to say, who do you think you're talking to? Who do you think you're talking about? What? Show me your cards, Donald. What cards have you got to entitle you to talk to me or about me in those kind of words? But then it transpired, May, that he didn't know that the day before the Ukrainians had tried to assassinate Putin, shoot his helicopter out of the sky. And when a journalist pointed that out, he said, oh, well, maybe that was the reason. Yeah, maybe, Donald, duh. So there is one part of me that continues to entertain, if you like, the hope that when he does say stupid things, it's because of the stupid people that he stupidly appointed around him. Last word to you, May.
I 100% agree with you, George, and I just pray that he. I'm very surprised about Tulsi Gabbard. It's hard for me to believe she's not telling Trump what he needs to know. I've heard that he doesn't listen to his briefings, doesn't read what they prepare for him. So maybe he's just not listening to her.
He definitely doesn't read, May.
Yeah.
He's only read one book. He's only read one book, May, and that's the book that he had ghosted in his own name.
Yeah.
I don't think he's got a big library.
I'm not sure
I don't think his presidential library will contain much except sticker books and puzzles.
Yeah.
May, you're a darling. Thank you very much indeed for that call. May in Oklahoma was the subject of our biggest ever YouTube clip. Best part of 1 million, if not over 1 million. That's the biggest clip we've ever had on a call. Big shout out to those who've given tonight already on the MOATS.tv website since we came on air. Patrick Riley, we might be related, Patrick. Adil Khan, John Sullivan, Adli Ayad, and to tonight's biggest donation so far, Barbara Howard. Thank you very much, Barbara. Thank you, everyone who has donated and will donate on MOATS.tv at the end of the show. Let's go to the great city of Liverpool, where Phil wants to talk about Ukraine. Go ahead, Phil.
Hi, George. Nice to speak to you. I've spoke to you before. The reason for my call is my own take on this situation is that I don't think we're looking at the bigger picture of Ukraine. If you look at the conditions that created World War I, they're very, very similar to the conditions that we have now. And I think history is repeating itself. At that time, the German Empire was the fastest growing economic power in Europe. The British Empire, if you replace the British Empire with America and blah, blah, and Germany with China. And what it was, the British, with people like Cecil Rhodes, so you had the lunatics wanting to take down and destroy the German economic situation. So they didn't just want a fast war, because within 6 months, the Allies would have beat the Germans, and the Germans admitted that. In fact, Lord Kitchener was killed on a boat heading to Germany to agree the surrender terms after 6 months. He wanted an honourable agreement, but unfortunately, the Anglo-American alliance wanted to destroy the German economy, and that's what's happening now. If you imagine, this war is about China, and the strategists in the West, and it's not Trump, it proves Trump, by the way, proves that the presence of America is really not running the country. But what the objectives are to take out Russia, and don't forget that's been stated as a strategic objective, break it into ineffective constituents like, non-entities really, small countries that are easily manageable. Let all
Balkanize it,
let all the financiers, all the traders that were, before Putin got in, were raping Russia of all its assets, let them take control of that. And then they want to choke off China. So the two most important things for them to achieve that is to destroy Russia and destroy Iran, who are both strategically important to China. And I think, unfortunately, I don't think there can be, if Russia can win a victory, I don't think there can be peace. And I think when we keep saying to ourselves, well, why is it going on? Why is it going? Because the strategic objective is to take down China. And that's my view. I can, by the way, I don't know whether I'm allowed to, recommend two excellent books which will make my Scouse delivery sound a bit more palatable. And if I can name them, George, one of them was written by a Scot, which is called Prolonging the Agony, which is about World War I. And another excellent book is called The World for Sale. I can't remember who the author of that was. Jim McGregor is one of the authors of Prolonging the Agony. Anyone who takes time to read them two books will have a different mindset about what's going on now. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Well, you said it very, very well, and your accent made the call even more wonderful. Thanks for that, Phil, in Liverpool. We've had another amazing week on the podcast. Top 5 in the UAE, Egypt, Morocco, and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, we're in the top 5 of podcasts in Saudi Arabia. We're still in the top 20 in Russia and in the top 40 in Australia. You can download the MOATS podcast by scanning the QR code on your screen now. Let's take a call from Canada. Canada's been busy tonight. RB on King Charles and Canada. Go ahead, RB.
Good evening, well, good afternoon, George. It's afternoon here in Canada.
Hi.
And King Charles came over and gave the throne speech, and it was just quite remarkable because he was doing so at the behest of Mark Carney, the new Prime Minister of Canada, who takes over the Liberal Party, which just 4 years ago was talking about how Canada is a post-nation state and decrying their colonial origins, and statues were being torn down and churches were being burned, and talking about the horrible crimes that the monarchy, the empire, did to Canada. And now all of a sudden we're supposed to forget all that, and King Charles is here in Canada giving a throne speech to the Liberal government, and everybody's supposed to get back into the idea of national unity and being part of the great Commonwealth again. The whiplash amongst the woke elite is hard to imagine. One of the most remarkable things, of course, is the fact that now we're supposed to be at odds with the Americans, and that now Canada is going to turn to Europe and help rebuild Europe's arms industry in their ongoing war against Russia. It is unbelievable. It is incredible. incredible how we keep picking the worst allies ever to try to drive us forward. And of course, the throne speech by King Charles kept talking about how Canada is now going to be more fiscally strong, and Mark Carney's economic plan, which he stole lock, stock, and barrel from the Conservative opposition so he would regain power, is quite incredible to watch. But yes, King Charles visits Canada, gives a throne speech, and once again, Canada is now we're referred to as the strong and free country, and that we are going to be autonomous for the USA. The absolute insanity of it was incredible to watch. And I'd like your opinion on
well, look,
this idea.
It is amazing what a few choice insults from Donald Trump can do to transform the liberal landscape, which had no good to say about the relationship with Britain, the Commonwealth, and definitely not King Charles. Only a few months ago, in fact, if you'd said last October, before Trump won the election in November, that these extraordinary turnarounds, remontada, as we say in football, would have occurred, nobody would have believed you. But my only request would be, RB, don't take this the wrong way, but can you not keep him? Because I, for one, don't really want him back. You're welcome to him. King Charles, Canada, you deserve each other. Now, my good wife's in the studio, Gayatri, with the social media news roundup. What's rattling, Gayatri?
John Sadler says, evening to you and your lovely wife. Just how far do you think our lunatics in charge will go in their aggression against Russia on behalf of the corrupt regime in Kiev? It makes no sense to me. It does make no sense to us.
Nothing's making any sense, though. That's the disturbing thing. Nothing's making any sense. And I've been around a long time, and in politics a long time, never mind on the earth. I've never known a period that made so little sense as this.
Yes, and as the Iran talks are very hot at the moment and taking place with all kinds of disruptions taking place, and then back on the table again, I just want to touch upon the fact that whilst we are speaking of a hot war, life goes on, as we've seen, as we recently visited both Iran and Russia. And these two countries, they have last week made a 20 years cooperation agreement between the two countries worth $10 billion to improve their communication and infrastructure between them and trade. So whilst all that is happening, the hot war is being threatened. Meanwhile, life goes on, and Russia and Iran, they just move on with their things, which we think they don't. We think everyone is sitting on
waiting for the latest.
Exactly. The latest outrage from Trump.
From Trump. That's a really good point, actually.
So imagine this $10 billion is focused on financial reform and regional connectivity. This is vital, isn't it?
Regional connectivity is the crucial new zeitgeist, isn't it?
It is.
China and Iran just finished their railroad, which cuts by more than half the time it takes for Chinese goods to reach Europe and the time it takes for Iranian oil to reach China. Yeah. Cut it in half. Yeah. By the simple act of constructing a railroad. You avoid the American Navy at every turn. It's entirely across friendly territory. This connectivity, and the Russians have got a similar set of plans elsewhere. It's a good point, a good antidote that you offer, really. Because, you know, we were recently in Iran. It's a fine and ancient and historic country, looked to be bustling economically to me. But even more, we've just been in Moscow. I mean, if we didn't have young kids and boys that are in the football business, I'd be saying to you, we should really be living in Moscow, because the standard of living there, the quality of everything there, from, taxes to the cleanliness in the streets, the lack of crime and so on. It's incomparable to here. I feel we're going down the drain while Russia is heading for the stars.
With the sanction, despite the sanction, or in spite the sanctions?
Or maybe even because of sanctions.
Well, this is where the strength comes in. And
so all these fabulous cars, you call a cab and you get a Chinese limousine. What are they called? Zerky?
Zeker.
Zerky plays for Manchester United.
And he comes from the Netherlands.
Sometimes. No, the Zeker. Is there a more beautiful motor than the Zeker? One Chinese motor after another went by me, and that's because of the sanctions. These would once have been BMWs, Mercedes-Benz, and maybe even the odd Jaguar. But they're now all Chinese cars, and very wonderful cars they are too.
Yeah, so basically what we're saying is while these hot talks are taking place about hot war, life moves on, life goes on in these countries, and how they go on with the sanctions in place. It's very impressive to see how the standard of living they've achieved and the fields they have scientifically developed in despite these sanctions. So, yeah.
And you've got the alliance, which we didn't talk about. Not only is China and Iran now best friends, not only is Russia and Iran now best friends, Russia and China are practically twins. I mean, they could not be closer together.
The exact opposite as the Western leaders wanted.
Yeah, well, that's what Nixon and Kissinger were all about. Keep Russia and China as far apart as possible. Our leaders have driven them into bed with each other, and they ain't ever getting out.
And we are asking about one particular Western leader, Trump, whether he's going mad. Yes, no, maybe. Lots of the comments are towards, yes, of course, obviously, Gordon Lamont, absolutely, power mad. One needs only to remember Lord Acton's admonition, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. Theresa Kelly, he lost far more than his mind decades ago. Those who fail to see that Lucifer has always guided his soul are in for a rude awakening when he rolls out the mark of the beast. Now that's the reference to the Bible. We may have to ask Peter Jordanson about that, because Jordan Peterson rather.
I wondered who you meant. Just another apostate.
Jordan Peterson, also from Canada, the philosopher, conservative philosopher, par excellence.
How his star has fallen.
Oh my goodness!
I mean, he's a sad sack now.
Well, I mean, are you not a proud Christian? Then why can you not acknowledge such? I'm talking about this viral clip that's gone about the debate in which he had to talk to 20 students, 20 atheists. So it's very clear it was a debate between 20 atheists and himself, a Christian, a believer. Yeah. And then he would not admit he was
wouldn't
a Christian.
admit that
he was
he's a believer.
making such a
Maybe
fool
he's
of
not
himself.
A believer. Maybe he's converted. He's so up Israel's ass. Maybe he's a quite different religion now. I mean, I wouldn't surprise me to find that out.
Maybe. So maybe Jordan Peterson doesn't know about the mark of the beast. Further on, Martin Brooks says, he is not going mad. He is a vainglorious nincompoop.
Yeah, he's always been that, though. But that didn't stop him winning 2 elections, maybe 3 elections, if the truth be told. So he does strike a chord with the American public, and for reasons which are logical. He's not one of the Beltway establishment, political establishment. He's seen by the American public as a bull in a china shop, one that they want wrecked.
Yeah, well, wrecked indeed. I actually, despite the poll leaning towards a certain way, I am actually more with Blue Tick. He says, I think the man knows exactly what he's doing and saying. And what I mean with that is perhaps the mad theory, which origins with previously mentioned President Nixon, the madman theory, just keep on going mad and
let people think you're mad and therefore you might do anything.
Foes and friends alike. So this is what our friend Sharmeen Narwani reported in the Cradle in regards to Netanyahu, very applicable, but maybe to a certain extent also applicable to President Trump. What do you think?
We'll see. Now, are you going to tell them about our new social media enterprise or me?
Well, I was going to wear my hat as well, because everybody knows you with your hat. I also like to wear hats, but mostly outdoors. And for our new enterprise, we are taking our hats off.
That's our new Twitter handle, Hats Off. There it is. Please follow it on Twitter. It's going to be fun. It's where we take our hats off and let our hair down. But I have not actually got that much hair. Gayatri's going to let her hair down. It should be more irreverent, more funny, maybe slightly edgier, occasionally naughty. It'll definitely never be boring. So please follow us, Gayatri and me. It's a spin-off, really, from the mother of all talk shows. It's called Hats Off, on Twitter only at the moment, but you never know how far it will go. Thanks, Gayatri. I'm afraid we have to go, or the chip shop will be closed. So please forgive us. We take your leave, and we'll see you again on Sunday, God willing. It was a truly amazing week. It's the first week that the mother of all talk shows, over the course of a week, has reached 5 million people, all or in part. It is groundbreaking, record-breaking, so bring somebody else with you, why don't you? Good night.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows.
Go get 'em, George.